From a flightless simulator at Ferris Air to a momentous meeting in an alley, to the complex mind of an architect, to every far sector in space, and to the brilliance of the central power battery on Oa. This is the podcast that covers the adventures of all of your favorite ring slingers. This is the Emerald Echo with your hosts, Adam and the Emerald Enthusiast. What's up, everyone? It's the Emerald Enthusiast. With the news of Nathan Fillion being cast as Guy Gardner in the upcoming movie Superman Legacy, Adam and I thought you would enjoy a look back at Guy Gardner's comic book origin. In one of the earliest episodes of the Emerald Echo podcast, Adam and I looked at Guy Gardner's first 3 comic book appearances in Green Lantern Volume 2, number 59, Green Lantern Volume 2, number 87, and Green Lantern Volume 2, number 116. The following audio is a portion of that podcast. We certainly hope that you enjoy it, and if so, please like and subscribe. Right, so then let's fast forward to 1968 in Green Lantern number 59, which is the first appearance of Guy Gardner. And it opens with a story called Earth's Other Green Lantern. And on the planet Oa, the Guardians show Hal Jordan a device called the Memory Machine. And it records all the memories of the Green Lanterns for historical preservation, which I really like that, you know, again, you get this idea of the rings transmitting information that can be used later on, hopefully for good purposes and not nefarious ones.
Yeah.
But they show the final moments of Abinsur's life, and they explained how the ring chose Hal. But we also see that there was another successor who was just as qualified as Hal, and Hal got chosen because he was closer.
So it all boils down to geography.
Right. Now, Hal's not offended, and that's good, you know, but they explained to Hal that this person is just as fearless and worthy as he is, and the ring almost went to him. So, intrigued by this, Hal is shown an alternate timeline by this machine.
Right.
And viewing the situation, we see that this person is a phys ed teacher from East City named Guy Gardner. Gardner is selected to be the Green Lantern for Earth in this timeline, much like Hal. And we see that he busts up a ring of spies. He takes down a lot of usual Green Lantern villains like Black Hand and Sonar, Dr. Polaris, the Shark, and Sinestro. And later on, there's a mission where he goes to this planet and they're infected by a yellow plague, and it's killed off all the adults on the planet.
Right.
And the surviving children are divided into 2 factions, and they've gone to war with one another with these giant robots. So at first, Guy is used as a pawn, but he manages to free himself and stop this ongoing struggle and convince the children to live in peace. So he returns to Earth, but he eventually himself succumbs to the yellow plague. And at that point, the ring would then choose Hal Jordan as Green Lantern.
Right. A couple of things I enjoyed about this. I really like this idea of like a sort of an alternate, a what if, to borrow a Marvel phrase, kind of story, right? And, you know, the details. So, like, he has a different oath in this continuity, if you will, than the regular Green Lantern oath. I found Guy to be less of a, how can I say this politely? Because in modern times, he's a bit of a jerk.
Yes. Yeah, you don't get, you don't get those in these early stories. No, you don't see that.
It was a little bit jarring because I was expecting that. And I'm not one that I don't hate guy at all. I kind of enjoy that he's a bit of a smartass. I mean, it differentiates him from everybody. I mean, from all the other lanterns. Like, yes, Hal can have a cocky side, but it's different than Guy being a smartass, and is different than the more militaristic and leadership quality of John Stewart, which is different than the artistic Kyle Rayner, and so on and so forth. So that character trait adds a lot to Guy, and I think having it missing there and not evident at all, it was very jarring for me. But I like that they didn't, try and make Guy any less formidable as a Green Lantern, just so that they could, prop up Hal.
Right. And one of the things you see him do in this issue is make armor for himself when he's on that planet, in the midst of that battle, which I thought was visually very pleasing. And I like when Green Lanterns do things other than, just, shoot the beams and make those kind of weapons when they make really intricate things like that. I've always found that interesting.
Yeah, it's very, it's showing his cleverness. And again, I like the fact that his skills as a school teacher came in handy because he's able to
relate to those children. Yes,
convince the kids to straighten themselves out and get along. So I like that. Just as Hal's experience as an airman bailed him out of some early jams, so too is Guy's here. I mean, in this what if scenario, that suit of armor would have been better if it was some sort of mask or something to protect him from the was the yellow plague? Was it called?
It was called the yellow plague, and he did not social distance in this story.
Well, I mean,
let that be a lesson to you, people.
Right.
Social distancing.
And think about how, if we would have seen something like that, how coincidentally, how poignant it would have been had he had something like that on him or whatnot, right, to protect himself. But it would have just been really eerie at the same time. But at the end of the day, I like how I guess because I don't necessarily think they had thought of the successorship just yet, and so at the end of the day, even in the altered continuity, Hal still becomes Green Lantern.
Indeed.
So it's kind of like Hal says he was destined to become a Green Lantern, but this was a strong origin tale for Guy Gardner, even though it was a what if scenario.
Yeah, and you mentioned the oath that he used. I wrote that down, and I would like to recite that for you now.
All right,
because I like on worlds afar or scenes at home, wherever the cause should make me roam. Always I vow to fight the good fight, to combat evil with all Green Lantern's might. That's interesting that he had his own oath.
I mean, there's a little bit of his attitude in. He didn't tell me anything, so I'm going to create my own. I'm good enough.
Right? Yeah, I liked it,
and the fact that it worked.
Yeah, well, we have seen over the years that different Green Lanterns use different oaths. Like a Rotlop fan, he actually doesn't know what green is because he's from a sector with no light, so he's blind, and so he calls the Green Lantern Corps the F-sharp Bell Corps because he only knows sound. Yeah. So we do see that the recharging process, the oath, can vary from lantern to lantern.
But I like that in this story, the ring and the lantern were like, yeah, I dig that. I'll work with that. I'll roll with it.
Yeah. So at the end of this, we see that Hal takes a business trip to East City to meet the real Guy Gardner, and the two become friends. Again, you talk about the antagonistic relationship that we're used to in modern times. That's not present here. But what is interesting is the cover of issue 59 is almost prophetic because he does seem to be a jerk on the cover. You know, he's standing over Hal and he's like, "There's only room for one Green Lantern on Earth, Hal Jordan."
Yeah,
and
it's
so
which is
I thought
why
that was interesting.
which is why I was expecting it, because it's right on the cover. It's like, all right, yeah, we're definitely in Guy territory here.
Yes. So what would you give that issue?
I would say a solid 8.5 out of 10.
Likewise, I would say, yeah, around 8.5 or 9. You know, I would have liked to seen a little bit more on the planet where he was, you know, fighting the yellow plague and the robots. That could have been extended a little bit more, but not much criticism other than that.
For me, it would have been a little bit higher if it had been an actual, event that happened instead of an alternate peek into what could have been. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
It would have been slightly higher, but yeah, I still a really good issue.
Right. So I do need to make a point here that issue number 76 in volume 2, that's when Green Lantern became Green Lantern / Green Arrow.
Right.
And that confuses people a little bit. That actually, they did that in volume 3 as well. So that was issue 76. So issue number 87, which is a very famous issue in 1971, that's the first appearance of John Stewart. And we get a story called Beware My Power, which continues Guy Gardner's tale. And so you make the point earlier that, Guy, he didn't really seem to be at first a character that was going to be a major player because his appearances are so kind of spaced out when you look at the issue numbers and the first 3 appearances.
Yeah. I mean, let's be honest. The majority of the issue is very much a John Stewart centric one. The real key to take away here in terms of a Guy Gardner aspect is, he was injured, and
Yes.
Hal's like, well, that's no good. I mean, he's my successor or my replacement. So at some point along the way, now you can tell me if there's a specific issue or if it happened off panel or off page. At some point along the way, they must have told Guy the whole Green Lantern mythos story and asked him if he wanted to be a reserve, because Hal's like, I need to find another replacement. So clearly, Guy must know what's up at that point.
Right. Well, you do see in his 3rd appearance that that he knows that he was the backup.
Right.
That's from issue number 116. But what we see here is that Guy is actually there. There's an earthquake in Coast City, and Guy is there, and there's a little girl who's on the edge of this road, and you see that the earthquake has opened up part of this road, and she's ready to fall. And she's frightened, and Guy tries to go out there and get her. So again, very, very heroic. I really liked that scene. The art was amazing there. Yeah. And in doing so, Guy's hit by a bus.
Right.
And I don't mean that figuratively. I mean, he's walloped by a bus in the back.
And just to to echo your point, I love that he did something heroic without the ring.
That proved his worthiness there. You can see why a ring. You can look at him and say, and I understand this criticism of the character. People say, why in the world, with all the soldiers and firefighters and policemen in the world, would they choose a phys ed teacher? Well, we see that here, that Guy's pretty special. That's why. He may not have some of the training that some of those other professions do, but he has the bravery.
Right. And listen, teachers today, especially in today's day and age, the kids that they have to deal with, some of them, I mean, good. I respect those people immensely. Because, geez, I wish they were. They probably wish they were Green Lanterns and could create a construct to remove the attitude from some of these kids. Like, what the?
Yeah, my mother's a retired school teacher, and I don't know how she did it for 30 plus years. And I actually did substitute teach one day, and there's a reason it was just one day. I was like, oh my gosh, how did my mother do this?
I'm done. Yeah. Look, The beauty of my situation right now is I'm just an uncle, so I have the fortune of seeing my nieces and nephews, being the cool, the fun uncle, and watching shows and movies and playing video games with them. And then at a certain time, their parents come and pick them up, and my job is over. So I'm like the reserve. I'm like the reserve Green Lantern. I'm like Guy Gardner before he gets drafted full time. I'm like good. I have my moment, and then the parents go home and deal with all the other crap that comes afterwards. But yeah, I don't know how I got a lot of respect for what the teachers have to put up with, and how they deal with some of this. Like I said, it seems that the attitudes are only getting worse. So imagine.
Well, back to the story, we see that Guy, obviously you get hit by a bus, you're going to be hurt. And he describes it as
worse,
he describes it as his body feels like a balloon that a lot of busted light bulbs are rattling around inside of it. And the doctors, you see Hal go to the hospital, and the doctors say he's bedridden for 6 months. And I'm like, oh, well, that's a little optimistic. I'm like, I think 6 months sounds like it's kind of on the lean side there.
Yeah, for sure.
But going back to what you say, Hal worries that with Guy out of commission, there's no alternate GL if something happens to him. And so we get, one of the Guardians appears via an image and states that there has to be an alternate replacement selected. And of course, that would be John Stewart.
Yeah. And I think we're going to leave the rest of the issue for our John Stewart episode.
Yeah, definitely. Because, there's so much to say about John Stewart. We can skip on to issue number, well, you want to rate that? It's not a huge story.
It's kind of hard to rate just a part of it. So I'll save the rating for that issue when we do John. How about that?
Yeah, it's a good one. And if you're a Green Lantern fan at all, if you know the mythos at all, you know that issue very well. So
yeah, it's a must read. I will say that.
So we jump to issue number 116 to a story called My Ring, My Enemy. And Green Lantern and Green Arrow, and of course I mean Oliver Queen, are fighting the mysterious Professor Ojo of the League of Assassins. And Ojo, he's constructed this gigantic eye robot that's hovering over Star City, and he's attacking Green Lantern and Green Arrow. And Green Lantern's ring isn't working properly. So he's forced to travel to Oa and have it repaired by the Guardians of the Universe. And meanwhile, Guy just kind of shows up and says, "Oh, by the way, I'm healed and I'm the replacement."
Yeah, it's like a sci-fi version of a tag out in a tag team match.
Yeah, and I'm like, okay, well, that must have been some just magnificent physical therapy. If in 6 months you overcame getting hit by a bus, so maybe that's a little bit of you've got to mark out for that story to say, hey, they wanted Guy back in it, and maybe that's a little overly convenient there. So the Guardians explain to Hal that his power battery is fundamentally flawed and has to be replaced before it malfunctions dangerously and someone's hurt. And so they give him a new one and tell him to safely dispose of the old one. Now, back on Earth, Guy's victorious, and he goes back home to recharge with the broken battery. And before Hal can get there to warn him, there's an explosion with the flawed battery, and Guy seemingly vanishes. And we find out later on he actually ends up in the Phantom Zone. But those are Guy's first 3 appearances.
It's funny. What's that?
Not huge, but important.
Yeah, no, I really liked the. First of all, the giant eye felt like something that we could probably see Grant Morrison revisit.
Oh, and Liam Sharp drawing that would be awesome.
Yeah. Second of all, League of Assassins. It reminded me of when I read it. Batman Begins. League of Shadows, the whole 9 yards. So yes, that was a good callback for me. But I really liked the banter between Oliver Queen and Guy Gardner, because they both have a bit of an attitude.
Yes.
And watching that in the field anyway, bounce off each other was kind of impressive. But also cool was that they make no illusions to the fact that Guy is new to the whole thing, and that nothing it doesn't go smoothly for him the first time around. Like he's got to go at the villain again.
Yes.
So
And
there's a more.
yeah. Now later on, Guy he does get his own series later on, and this is something we may talk about on a later
Oh,
podcast.
definitely for sure.
He becomes the warrior. And of course he has all different powers at that point, and he and John would co-headline a Green Lantern book later on, and he also made an appearance on a couple of the episodes of Green Lantern the animated series, and he was absolutely hilarious on those.
Oh, agreed, 100%. And we'll touch on all those, but it's later down the line. But no, it's like I said, I gain such an again you were saying the brief appearances and sort of the frequency is very sporadic.
Yeah, spaced out. Yes.
But when he does come to play, something big is either happening to him or is the result of that of his appearance. So it's and like you said, like the whole thing at the end about how he disappears and how that was sort of foretold, right? And so.
Yes, and he does keep making appearances, of course, over the years. And the thing that I admire about this is when you read the more modern comics where they are telling their stories based upon what has come before. These stories at this point, they're building that universe, and to see the Green Lantern mythos built block by block, it's just an amazing experience. It's like I said, time travel.
It is. It really is.
Yeah. If you're a comic book fan, you've got to go back and read these key issues because you will inevitably enjoy it.
Like I said, I loved it. I love seeing some familiar things, but also how they came to be and stuff like that is really impressive. So I enjoy these at least at the early stage of our podcast. These look backs to the formation of what I'm used to reading. So it's a really good experience. It has been so far, and I'm sure it'll continue. But and plus, I enjoy Green Arrow as well. So seeing him and getting a early peek at his history was fun too.
Well, those two characters, much like Green Lantern and Flash, Green Lantern and Green Arrow, that's one of the pairings that DC has made use of so many times throughout the years, including the recent Morrison run. We saw that. So
yeah, and I would love an ongoing where it's just the two of them.
And I wouldn't rule that out. I mean, that's proven to be very viable over the decades. So it would never surprise me if we see another iteration of that.
Look, right now, Green Arrow doesn't have a book in publication, and there are so many Green Lanterns that you could use to partner with. Doesn't necessarily have to be Hal.
Right.
And it would be, depending on which one you use, it would obviously be a different dynamic. And it could prove interesting. So I hope that concept is revisited in a monthly.
Yeah, I'd be fine with that. But so that's a look at two of the most important characters in Green Lantern's history in Sinestro and Guy Gardner.
What would you rate that issue? Because we didn't.
I will say, like I said, Guy showing up and saying I'm all healed after, it's an indeterminate period of time, but he's obviously all healed up. That's a little, I thought was a little overly convenient. So I would say around a 7.5, maybe. It wasn't the best, but I still liked the overall product and the fact that we saw that Guy was going to be a bigger part of the story going forward, because again, he vanishes and later on we learn where he went, and again, that's a story unto itself.
We'll have to read that issue at some point.
Yes. I know what happened. I know what happened, but we've also been going on for almost 2 hours. So
yeah, so definitely, I would agree with you 100%. 7.5 out of 10. But no, this was like I said, these are two important characters, and it was good to give them a spotlight at their early introductions, and we're going to continue that next month.
No doubt.
We've decided that we're going to spotlight Jon Stewart.
Spotlight, all right. Yes, the master builder himself.
Indeed, and look forward to going all in on the issue that we briefly touched on, and a couple more as well. Until then, Donnie, if people want to discuss or wax philosophically with you about the Green Lantern Corps, where can they do that? Online?
They can find me on Twitter as the Emerald Enthusiast. You'll see on a regular basis I put Green Lantern product reviews up, and any kind of questions that you would like for us to answer on the podcast here, go ahead and either hit up Adam or me, and we'll see if we can answer those questions for you. Until then, I'm going to recharge my ring and head back to Oa. Everyone stay safe, okay?
Right, and if you want to get in touch with me, as Donnie was referring to, you can do that at Adam_LeafsFan, or on Facebook. We have a group where you can request admittance into the group, the Multiverse Music Podcast Network, and we will add you, and we'll continue the discussion there. Until next time, keep your rings charged and protect your sector. So long, everybody.